So here we are in Sydney. We really wanted to just sort of, we've got a media personality, and we've also got one of the most Googled insolvency practitioners in
as self-diagnosed.
Self-diagnosed.
Yeah.
So
What were they Googling you about?
I
Hope it's
think
related.
it starts with P.
personal insolvency. So it's thought it'd be an interesting science experiment to put you in the same space and see what actually happened. You're both members of the Insolve panel. Insolve was designed to get together independent insolvency practitioners, and we're trying to get people to get the right advice from qualified people as soon as they possibly can. So why don't I throw it to you? What do you think that business people should be alive to now? And we were talking about things like AI, we talked about the impact of that, or is it increased complexity?
I think everyone observes the speed at which businesses and the business world is moving, and the pace of innovation and the pace of adopting to the laws, and what's the government thinking, what's the regulations, what else is coming from competition. So this constant need to be up to date and to be ahead. And it all comes back to some really basic lessons that I think we all learn. And we all know what's one of the reasons that companies fail. It's usually to proper books and records and a head for management. So as soon as the books and records start to say that there's signs of trouble, get ahead of the game. I add one more thought. As soon as you think you've got a problem, you must act, because the time clock, it's faster now than it was before. The time of lodging, the time of the debt becomes personal, has got faster and tighter than it may have been before. So you don't have the luxury of spending it and pacing it out.
Chris, in his own sort of talking about when he was on the panel, Steve said that running a business was never easy anyway. Do you think it's harder, or if you're following on that?
Oh, it's a piece of cake. So easy. Just start a business and just magically makes money. Money falls from the heavens. Everyone loves you, and it always grows.
Yeah, right. So
yeah, so no.
Yeah. So you're feeling that is it more administrative overhead than there always was? I thought with online MYOB, Xero, all those sorts of things, and then suggesting how to do stuff, it'd be so much easier that businesses would be able to do their books and records so much faster and better than they ever did before.
Lots there. Can I just talk about banking? Going into a bank, you've got your checks, you're depositing them, you're writing up your deposit slips, sound terribly time consuming. Then you'd get your bank statements once a month and you'd be able to tick it off and do your accounts. Now we've got this almost instantaneous payment of property and receiving funds. But the other side of it is that you try finding anyone in the bank that you'd like to talk to about a problem which doesn't relate to a screen. And those problems are compounding out there in small SME world. So on one hand, we may have made some brilliant moves with banking, but the interaction with people and actually getting some real humans behind the transactions that are happening can make it very difficult. And so you solve one problem, but in fact you've opened up another issue. It's about streamlining banking has also resulted in problems in doing banking. My statement about it has always been difficult to do business. Well, but there's different issues that arise from time to time in every cycle of technology or cycle of business. Yes, you might be able to easily log on and get some information, but try doing anything outside that system and very difficult. How many times you try to ring the tax department and get someone that may respond, unless you've got the Deputy Commissioner's personal phone number.
I had, just on that, I had super fund checks coming in from the ATO. I don't know why they sent me a check as opposed to just simply an EFT straight to the bank account. I then take those checks down to my bank, and they made a decision we no longer accept checks.
Yes.
But this is valid currency, and they've just decided on this particular date, it happened to be Valentine's Day this year, no more checks.
I love
that. Now I've got to follow up the ATO and try and get them to convert a check into an EFT.
Yes.
I'd rather just go, it's not worth my time.
You can't do that responsible.
No.
But checks are a fascinating thing. Once again, they're saying
Yeah.
you probably bank at the same bank that I do, and this profound problem around what you do with it. And there's still sections of the community that still want to move in cheques. They're slowly phasing out of money from very good security reasons, doing up your petty cash and doing these things, but then it's all related to your ability to get onto electronic banking.
I remember, and just going back to the check, we're harbouring a little bit, but late 90s, you get your wages by way of cheque made out to Johnny Cash. You then go and take your cheque, you stand in line with everybody else that got paid that day because you're trying to turn your cheque into cash so that you can go and spend it. Anyway, we've come a long way.
We have. I used to, when I first uni job, I think it was envelope weekly with cash in it, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, that business went broke. But the thing that's interesting, I suppose, is I suppose when I started, I've got two of the greater minds in the profession. So how do I tell what should business people worry about or navigate that you've seen that's either different, you're saying it's no easier than it was, it's just hard for different reasons? Is that what we're really saying? It's like there's always something around the corner that will snare you if you're not watching out.
I might jump in before Stephen. So it used to be survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Now it's survival of the most adaptable. And I think it goes to Stephen's beginning point, which is like things are moving that quick that if you're not adapting to that, you are being left behind. And I think AI is one of those classic ones, which is if you're not on that curve or the initial wave and you get left behind in that realm, you don't just go back a year, you now get left behind light years. And the commentary seems to be, if you're not embracing AI, you're going to be replaced by someone that is embracing AI.
Yeah.
Can I say something on a personal note? I've been in this industry for about 40 years. I'd have to say the first 20 years experience has no application to what I do now because of this change. You're solving problems in the era that you're involved in. So all of us need to be up to date with all sorts of trends, and that includes the advisors. There's another piece of advice. Do you go into a doctor that hasn't operated on a person for 10 years, or do you go into someone that constantly does operations? I guess you'd work the answer. So it's the same thing in our space. Unless you've got people regularly in this space operating on failed businesses, they're the ones you've got to get. They're the ones that know what's happening in the market. They might have immediate experience for the same type of industry you got to. But if you're going to be talking to someone that does very few operations and they've got to go and learn something on the hop at your expense generally, that might not be a good investment decision. So back to the panel.
Yes.
And just on the AI quick change and the banking quick change, we've now also got labour issues, which is like, remember with the COVID, all of a sudden you had no one coming into the country, a lot of people exiting the country. So somehow this labour shortage was created, then demand goes through the roof, then wages go through the roof. We're trying to work out how do you solve that? So what do? We now offshore. A lot of businesses are now offshore. Used to be hypothetical. Now it's like, how quickly can I implement it? So you think about that, but that's how we've had to adapt really quickly because otherwise our bottom lines get obliterated.
Yeah, another observation in 40 years is that how we wrote insolvency reports and covered all the issues was a 10 or 15 page report. And some of it matters now just to complete with the statutory requirements can be 50 or 60 pages. There's a little bit of exaggeration in then, but so it tells you that the generation of information is a bit of an overload. It still needs to be done, but you need mechanisms to get it done, and outsourcing's clearly, look at it, been adopted by the banks and the big end of town for a long time.
I'm of the view, though, following what you're saying, that, and you and I have both spoken about this, that there surely are statutory requirements to produce pages and pages of documentation and deep reporting, which someone will get AI to help them write, and it will then get sent to somebody else who will then get AI to help them read. So it'll start from about 10 words. Here are the key points. Here's 100 pages. Here's 100 pages. Here's the key points. So maybe AI, that I think you're absolutely right. If you don't embrace these things, you're effectively operating with a brick tied to your foot because there's somebody who's able to do something that much faster than you.
Yeah.
So,
Not saying the service was any better. I'm not even suggesting that a 50-page report or what you can do in 15 pages, and that I think is the bit of the shame of it. The issues can still be covered briefly and succinctly.
is that
but you have to-
whack-a-mole though? Because they're trying to stamp out practices that just merge over. It's a bit like that sort of pre-insolvency advisors where I always rant on about, like, so they sort of just move around to the next way of giving
as the new
advice.
change comes in, they change their
to
tactics.
go around
Absolutely.
it, yes.
Complexity is good for some professionals. If you make it more complicated, you might think that you need to get more advisors around the space. That's unfortunate, but that's how regulation sometimes works. I can't want to really go on about lawyers, but there's a problem, isn't there? You constantly make something a little bit more complicated, and then people need other professionals to solve the problem that we've got.
And that probably goes to hyper speciality. You know how, like, we all used to be generalists. So you'd start off as an accountant. Yeah, I could do liquidations and tax returns. and then we went, oh, the tax returns suck. Let's just stick to liquidations. And now we're seeing hyper speciality inside our own professions, which is we are now just SBR guys and CBLs are nothing more. You know, we're not going to do any of those sort of more thought-provoking, creative solutions to business restructuring.
You leave them for me because I like doing that.
But it just is an example, and we're starting to see it in the numbers, aren't we? We're starting to see certain firms and practices are like, well, we specialise in these areas, and then you've got guys that are generalists in all areas.
But I mean, the argument is, does AI mean that you can do that, or maybe you can't because it's just not possible in that world to be able to be competitive, to be able to do everything. You've got to be really good at something.
Yeah, it depends on the model.
Tools to react.
Depends on the model you're trying to achieve. So, you know, some are high volume type models. So in other words, we're going to do very high numbers and potentially there's a price reduction element to that, which satisfies a certain market. And others are we're a bit more custom and complex, but you're gonna have to pay for that, you know.
We were talking prior to this session about, you know, in the case of Will, who's filming us today, and thanks, Will, about the tactile nature of film and vinyl. It's a real sort of different experience from video and a CD or a podcast or a download of music on Spotify or Apple Music. But you can listen to a lot of music and it's a lot cheaper. And you can have
terabytes.
Yeah, we'd have lots of video is a lot easier to produce. So I think the question that for any business person then is that that model that you're talking about just in the insolvency profession, I would think would apply. You either pay for premium or you've got to have a really lean model that you can afford to be able to do something at quite low cost. I mean, that's always been the case, hasn't it? I mean, you either super high value, low transaction, or if you're getting low margins, you've got to make a lot of business to make that money.
Well, I remember, I saw a couple of insolvency firms exit the market just as COVID hits, right? And the reason is because when you're operating at a volume, you need the volume to keep coming in. And as we experienced during COVID, you know, we basically say goodbye to 50% of new business for about 3 years. So if you're relying on that engine, we saw practitioners exit.
These risks are real, and we're not minimising them into trivia. It's really serious stuff. Our sort of work too, you not only deal with the person's business, but you look at the director and say, now, how are you going? Because there's an enormous amount of emotional damage can be done. There's sort of, not only is the bank account depleted, but the emotional and physical well-being of people. Now, you know, that close to not wanting to live. Can be that confronting. So these things are really serious. Earlier on about discussion about coming in early and getting someone to talk to it and go through it, because half the time we're therapists as well. And, you know, frankly, after all these years, it really is only about money. There's much more important things. Your partner, your family, your kids, your mum and dad, far more important than running a business. There'll be another chance for most of us to have another go, because the capitalist system in Australia allows you to have another go. It's extraordinary. Nobody really gets locked up for failed companies. If you're fraud in a company, well, that's a different thing. But if you're honestly trying to entrepreneurially have a go, there's space, and there's a space to do it again. Do it many times and you might get into trouble. But let's just put that for a pause. Do not let the thing consume you. Get in and see an expert before it damages everyone else in your life, and before even the pet will look at you and stop coming home and kicking me, because I'm sick of that, and he might run away too. So you'll lose your favourite dog. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
We put all of our partners and senior managers through mental health first aid, because nearly every one of us has had to pull someone off a ledge that was just about to go. Like, it happens. And it reminds me of an example I had this week, actually, is a guy goes bankrupt by court order. AFSA ends up with the job. AFSA goes, oh, there's a property there, it's too hard. They flick it out to industry, so I get it. And we haven't heard from this guy, so we lock everything down with caveats and transmissions and all that. And then we finally got a hold of the guy. And we said, mate, you've just gone down for, call it a $200,000 debt. What do you got in the estate? And he goes, well, I've got 400 grand in assets in my house. And I said, oh, okay, well, why don't we work out a solution where we can get that, unlock that 200, get your creditor body paid. Then you're out of bankruptcy. You become annulled by way of paying full debt. And as soon as I brought that to the surface, got his sister involved, because she's going to be the one to sort of help. She then called me days later and said, whatever it is that you said to solve that, everyone's now cool, calm, collected. We're at peace.
Got a plan.
We've got a game
strategy.
plan. We're no longer stressed. We know it might take 2 months to resolve, but totally grateful that, we didn't just go and...
What is time if you're not around? What is time?
Yep.
So, well, thank you for sharing those. So then, should people still run businesses, or is it all just too hard?
That's a really interesting economic question. There's only so many people you can be employed by the government, unless you want to fully socialise everything. And I don't know, and I don't think anyone's got an appetite for that. But so it's been the same for 40 years. There's about 28% of the population is employed by governments, and that's local, state and federal, and armed forces and police and etc. And that, there's nothing shameful about that. That's about the average of most economies run at those sorts of numbers. And then there's the big end of town, the big mining companies, the big banks, and they take up another 30 or 40%. So it's the rest of us who need to find a spot that allows this entrepreneurial ability to keep going and be innovative and change. And you need a healthy number. And if I put it to another way, you also have a percentage of failures, because failures also demonstrate someone's having a go, but also you need liquidators also to sort of, and you've probably done this too, you finally walked in and you said, this is not a business. This has got no viable way out of this room. You need to stop. What's an example? They shut the border and these tourist shops are trying to sell product to Chinese tourists. So you can't think you've got a model that's got to work. You just need to close shop, hibernate, the borders will open eventually. So we've all got stories. So what I'm saying is that you can't close this idea that of what small SMEs are about. And we also need to be a very healthy environment, allow them to it. And I've made the comment before, nobody goes to jail unless you're deliberately frauding and you're playing with the Crimes Act, misleading and deceptive conduct. But just getting in and trying and having a go, and if you do risk your own assets, well, that's what you risk too. But no, capitalism is the most exciting things because it invents most things. You don't leave it to the government to invent anything. Big business will consume the imagination of a lot of people, but sometimes they're buying up. Well, they will, because they'll nullify it into a sort of public service mentality. So if you're working for the Commonwealth Bank, it's probably got very similar characteristics of working for a public service. That's interesting because the bank used to be owned by the government. So you've got to allow these entrepreneurials and to come up with some ideas, give it a go. The failure rate's unfortunately there, but we blessedly read in the financial papers people who buy waterfronts. Now, how did that happen?
I came to the conclusion, I said, business owners make all the money. And then I was thinking, maybe landowners make all the money, you know, ultimately. So it's a combination between monopoly and learn how to make cash flow. You know, and you don't want to stymie that, because I think you want people to have that opportunity to go for greatness, because generally, you know, rising tide lifts all ships. So if I'm successful, people around me will follow. As opposed to, we're going to cut creativity and everyone's going to be an employee, and you know, that would just.
So I think it's
sounds too dull. There needs to be a bit of excitement about it.
I don't know. I think that. So isn't it about then? So obviously, learn the lessons that you can share. That's I think what we're trying to do with this podcast is just get a sense of some of the things you've seen. Get the help that you need early. It is about being adaptable, and sometimes adaptation means, hey, this is not a business, doesn't it? It means having the strength to call it sooner rather than later, isn't it?
So some people just have a glorified job because they are the asset. Like if you remove you from the equation, there is nothing.
There's nothing. Yeah.
You're like, and you just don't want to be employed.
Can I just leave one closing thought? And it's about anyone in any business. There's generally an association or a society or a group or a club that people of like-minded join. It's been around for hundreds of years. You know, there's the Smiths Silver Workers of London or the Guild Halls of London. It's not a new idea, but it's an idea that's still relevant today. You can face things on your own, or you can face them collectively. You can work out what else is happening in that industry. So most industry has an association of some types. They have conferences, they have magazines, and I sometimes think we forget about them. And it's, I think, to their own expense. If someone else is going through the similar situation as you are, and they've worked out how to solve it, well, wouldn't it be good to get to those people rather than trying to soldier out and endeavour to conquer the problem yourself?
Yeah, and don't be a martyr. Yeah.
Well, ultimately it ends to possibly, and this is just a statement out there because I don't belong to all the industries. From time to time we come across them. It's the nature of our work. But in each of these spaces, the technology moves on, but there's someone else collectively doing that research. And our own industry's got a standout association called the AIIP, but that's by liquidators getting together and having regular conference and discussion groups. So if someone else is having these problems, get out there and, you know, it's surprisingly, you think it's counterintuitive that you want to talk to a competitor. But collectively, we can advance the industry and the collective knowledge, and certainly to our staff that we owe the next generation to come along after us, a very important, you know, lead in. But collectively, I don't know if photographers have got themselves a guild of some sort, but knowing what's going on and someone reviewing the camera products is equally beneficial. You're going to buy 3 cameras and try to do your own comparison, or reach for a magazine. I know you picked Canon. I guess I should be product plugging, but so that was my closing thought. Don't abandon the idea that associations or groups are not offering anything, because I think that they are really absolutely important. And I don't have time. I've got my head down. I'm just trying to, but looking ahead, someone else has possibly been looking further ahead. 1 or 2 articles might save you a hell of a lot of grief.
That's good. It is
later
about keeping your head out of just doing this and try and raise your head above the.
But if someone's done the research,
listen to a podcasts like this. Get some advice from great wise heads. Hey, don't know where that ended up. It sort of started.
I've got greyer hair than you.
Thank you both.
I've been practicing.
Yeah.
Stephen Hathway, and Chris Baskerville. Thank you both for your time this afternoon.
Oh, great.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Life should be fun, shouldn't it?